Would like to call to order the June 4th, 2018 Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners work session. Welcome, everyone. First item on our agenda is the approval of the work session agenda, which you all have a copy before you. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. First up, we have discussion items. No action, and we're glad to have Kelly Sifford for a recognition.
Good afternoon. With me, I have Casey Fields and Randy Welch from Duke, if y'all want to come on up. They're going to speak to you a little bit about the HHF program that we've been operating, and when they're done, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we've done with the HHF and the rebate money that we've received from them.
So my name is Casey Fields. I work for Duke Energy as a program manager in our income qualified services. We run a series of programs that meet your community. Two of those that we're talking about today is our Helping Home Fund and our Weatherization Program. The Helping Home Fund is a program that we established about 3 years ago that works with agencies, nonprofits, and entities that provide weatherization services to the communities in the area. They do a series of goals for us. They do HVAC work, replacement repairs. They install appliances and provide dollars for those kind of work. There's also a health and safety component there. So we provide dollars to the area. We've been very fortunate to have Kelly to help us in this community to deliver those services. The other program is our Weatherization Program, and that is a filed energy efficiency program with the electric company. And they do also provide dollars for health and for energy efficiency upgrades with HVAC and duct work in the home. So basically, we lean on Kelly to deliver those services, and then we provide dollars for that. And it's been a great relationship. Our vendor that we use is North Carolina Community Action. They take those and manage the relationship for us. And we have nothing but praises with her group to kind of deliver those services and do great work for us. So we do appreciate that.
Thank you. So just to kind of give you an update as to what we have done with the rebate and the HHF, I just kind of included it so that you all would get a kind of a big picture. So over the past 2 years, we've collected and expended $149,868, assisting 59 households. Just to give you an idea of some of the things we've done HVAC replacements and repairs, appliance replacements, plumbing repairs, some random home repairs, knob and tube replacement, ramps and grab bars, and vapor barriers and ASHRAE fans for those units. So we've been able to do quite a bit of work that we would not have been able to do otherwise to make these homes safer, more efficient, and keep some families in their home longer. So we wanted to thank Duke today for providing us with the opportunity not to be in your pockets for a change, but to get some assistance and to provide our citizens with some great resources.
Great. Thank you very much. We appreciate you being here today and appreciate what you do. Casey, it's good to meet you. Randy is a familiar face that we see frequently and for a long time. Not that he's old, he's just been helpful to us for a long time, but we certainly appreciate the kind comments about Kelly and her department, and we share those opinions as well. So it's a wonderful program when we're able to help Cabarrus County residents out with your assistance. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, next item. We move now to discussion items for action at our June 18th meeting. First up is Kelly Klutz and Tim Louder from Cabarrus County Schools. Welcome.
Thank you. We're here this evening to ask the commissioners to fund $1.510 million so that we can get started on the replacement for R. Brown McAllister. for us to be able to accommodate the 5-year plan as planned. We would like to open that school in August 2020, and to do that, we'll need to get started on that as soon as possible.
And those funds are breaking down as to the design development for architecture, land acquisition, it's $500,000, legal fees and engineering, that's about another $110,000. That's how that breaks down, with the bulk of it being obviously design development fees for $900,000.
Okay, questions for Mr. Louder or Ms. Klutz?
What size school do you propose this replacement will be? I mean, what are the
800
plans, and
students.
what are the plans for the current R. Brown McAllister, where I went to school and my children went to school? Just asking. I'm sure the neighborhood will ask, so.
It's a great little school, and but obviously, right now, the plans are to move forward on the existing site. The existing school will remain in operation through that process. At the end of that, either we will offer an opportunity to either redevelop the structure itself into another use, or else we will demolish it and expand the area.
And the reason I was looking at it, says land acquisition of $500,000. So are you buying more land on at the current site? Is that part of it? That's.
No, in order to put it back on the existing site, there's a need to improve the traffic patterns there, and by doing so, with some realignment there with, I guess that's Wilshire Boulevard, to allow us to make that realignment so we have better in and out traffic, and also a better traffic pattern on Union Street, because, going from 400 students to, or 380 some students to 800 will change the traffic pattern a little bit. So.
Okay, so the land acquisition is turn lanes or whatever you need there to get it in. It's not like buying another 25 acres or something.
No, ma'am, we have 35
Okay.
acres right
I
there
just,
now.
yeah, I knew it was big. I mean, I know the backside of it's not that buildable with the slope. I mean, you're gonna have some challenges with it. Or you got the blacktop that's way down. And obviously you'll determine that in the first phase of design build, but I was just double checking on why you had $500,000 in there for what kind of land you thought you were buying.
Yeah, we've done some design development early on, just to look at, how the school would fit on that site. And obviously, there's a large ridge that runs back from the western playground. That ridge would actually be lowered quite a bit to build a building pad for us. We would access it out around the existing structure, and then obviously realigning McAllister Boulevard, if you will, and ties in with Wilshire.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and we had allocated some funds for a study for that property back there. Anything you'd like to share from the results from that study as to the buildability and so forth and so on?
It does. We had a pretty extensive study done to make sure that we could fit 800 students on that site. The school is somewhat linear. It will be one level, or it'll be a two-story school, but it'll be on one level. It won't be a step situation. Based on preliminary layouts and grades, it will be pretty much a balanced site. We will actually take as much dirt as we need and move within that period of the site and utilize the back sources. So it was pretty well used for the funding there. And the programming works out to be about 100,000 square feet of building in order to house 800 students.
And the current population of McAllister's 350, is that?
About 360, I think it was.
360. One thing I failed to mention as I opened the meeting, Commissioner Shue sends his apologies. He was scheduled to pick up a grandchild at the airport at 1 o'clock today, and they called with weather delays in Texas. And anyway, so he had to be there at 5 o'clock. So he's missing the session, but he did express some concerns about building new seats as opposed to replacing old seats. So you're actually gaining about 440 seats
Yes.
at this site.
Yeah, we're trying to strike a balance between replacing the schools that are 60, 70 years old versus also providing for the growth in the area. By being able to add 450 or so seats at this site allows us then to be able to actually bring more of the community that surrounds this area back into the school and then free up seats in the growth areas around. And also allow us a little bit more magnet seats than we use right now. We're pretty much maxed out on those at that location.
I'm sorry, may I ask one other question? So, you're doing the study now with the demographics and everything. Well,
Yes, ma'am.
Is this portion included in that study? So you're using it as a basis for needing 800 seats there? And
It is.
where it's going to pull from and everything else?
It is. They have evaluated the entire area, and they've included this in, so we originally talked about building it for 650 seats, but part of this evaluation, and these folks said, you need to put 800 at this site to accommodate the realignment the way that it needs to happen.
And when will you get a final report from, I know that there was a comment made, I watched the YouTube channel, because I missed the budget presentation, and I was at NCAT, which you know what NCAT is. There was a comment that there's some data on the website available now, but I didn't know when the final report would come out for everybody to understand what they're recommending to you and when it would be shared with us and that kind of stuff.
So yes, the information is available on our website. We have a whole site dedicated to that, lots of information there. They have presented a preliminary presentation to our board already one time, but we'll be presenting more times. The goal is for them to vote on the realignment plan anywhere from December to February. So we're thinking January possibly. Would love for it to be December at the very latest. It can't be beyond February. So within that time frame, you should be seeing more presentations and more information updated as they do their planning and meetings.
Thank you.
So you have definitely then narrowed it down to this site for this new school.
We have.
Did they do any sort of, I guess, the consultant, was there any discussion with them? This was the newest school coming on board since they've been hired, right? I mean, they knew, the high school was funded, so they knew to use that.
Right.
The elementary school was funded, so they knew to use that. So this was in anticipation of us being able to come to an agreement on that, so they have definitively used these 800 seats, or is it, you've got sort of two different pathways here? One, if we do it, and one, hey, if for some reason we said we just can't afford it, and this is the other document.
So my understanding, and Tim, you correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is they have advised us, based on the information that they have, that we need 800 seats. If we don't put 800 seats there, we've got a problem, and we've got to go back and find a different solution.
But
400 of them are already occupied, so it's really, do you need 400 seats, or do you need 800 seats?
We need 800 in total, so that we can pull more of those students that are surrounding that area, that are around McAllister, into that area. Those students are going to different schools that maybe have growth, and so we bring some of those students into our Brown McAllister, and then that frees up some of those outside seats that have growth. Our Brown McAllister area doesn't have growth right now.
Okay.
right now we have kids coming from the surrounding areas going out to Irving, going out to Weddington, going out to Wolf Meadows. They're all being pulled away from the area because we opened new schools back 20 years ago and we redistricted new schools. Now those areas are growing beyond the school's capacity. Rather than build another school in that area, is to build a school back and then pull those kids back in to the neighborhood school versus pushing them out as we did 15, 20 years ago.
Sorry, every time you ask something or they say something, it makes me think of
That's
something
all right.
else. So, not really for this discussion, but since you asked about what they're looking at with the demographics or demographers, Coltrane Webb, at one point I think there was a thought that they might come into this building and then do something with that
Swing
building.
school.
So is that still out there or?
The swing school situation, yes, there is an opportunity. We're looking at alternatives to be off-site at Coltrane Webb, simply because of a very small site in middle of historic district, so all those kind of things play against us. And in doing so, we would not have to bring them in as a swing school concept. If we're not successful in acquiring the off-site properties, then we would obviously use the extra capacity we build at Coachman, well, or Brown McAllister, plus the existing school to house that population during a transition of tear down and build back of that one. So we have two options there, but that would may delay the actual zoning of kids into that. We'd rather not do that, by the way, but that's a fallback position. You always have to have one.
Well, it's a tough spot to be in, and as we all know, with the budget process that we've just been through, the schools out where trailers are, the parents there say, hey, why are we not building new schools to take on this capacity? And the parents and the kids were at the old that are 50, 60, 70 years old. Hey, why are you always building the schools out there and not replacing ours? And then the taxpayer says, can't you get any of this cost to come down? So, it's a tough spot. But, you guys have provided some good information, so for us to try to figure out how to proceed.
Yeah, that's why I love my job. Tim said
I
every
think
day.
that was a very fair evaluation you just made of the choices. But just to be clear, you did not say anything definitive about replacing Coultron Webb, moving Coultron Webb, relocate.
That's just a 10-year plan. That's what we
That's
presented the rest
just
of the day.
thoughts out
Yes,
there, yeah.
yes. We wouldn't ask
Just
them
wanted to be
tomorrow.
able to respond to those calls, which will surely come.
I'm sure they will.
Yes. Okay, any other
Yes.
questions? Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay, just to make sure well, two things. Ms. Lowry, you said the future use was ultimately to take the school down and have the one school on site?
No, we offered an opportunity to repurpose that school within the 10-year plan.
Okay, so it's going to stay in its current empty space until funding is available and a new use is
That would
discovered?
That would be the preferred plan.
Even if it's
we feel
10
like
years
it's
out?
not. I hope it's not 10 years out, but yeah, if it is, I guess we have to do something
Okay.
with it. We'd have to obviously do something else to it in the middle to make it live that life cycle for 10 years unoccupied, for sure.
Okay, so if you move tonight or this month to move forward on this, then right behind that is funding for the school itself in October, November, and there is no money available for that right now. So you are committing, really, if you're going to do this, you're committing to go ahead and pay for that school. So that means we would have to go out and try to sell debt in that general time period. And right now, the only project that we have is this project. We don't have anything to group with it right now. So the administrative cost could be higher unless we could find some additional property to go ahead and secure for future schools, or if we have one of our projects that we can move into there too. But I just want to make sure that if you're committing, if you're, not tonight, but in 2 weeks, if you're committing, then we're committing to go ahead and move forward on this. And so that means that new debt service will come on next year, along with the debt service for the courthouse, I believe, or the courthouse may come on the following year.
Ms. Farrington's going to come up here and answer that.
Yeah, and while you're up here, Ms. Farrington, please explain where the money is coming from for this particular project.
And I want to could you also do clarification on your date of October of this year, just to make sure, and I appreciate you pointing that out. I had not gone to October yet, so.
Okay. So where do we start? Okay. The $1.5 million, we have secured some different monies to be able to come up with that. So we're going to use the savings from our Mount Pleasant Middle School. That project is complete, so we had $885,000 left in that project. We had $505,086 for Mount Pleasant Middle School contingency that could be added to that. And then the balance would come from your commissioner's contingency, so that's $119,058. So those three numbers added together would give us the $1.5 million that we need right now to get started with R. Brown McAllister. Now, I know we've talked to you before about if we don't, but Kelly suggested before, if we don't break ground by this date, then we can't open in an August timeframe, which is ideal to open a school in August. So this school is slated to open August of 2020. So their timeline that they've shared through an email was that they needed their debt money by November 1st. So that's this fall. So we're talking less than 6 months away from now. They would need their amount of debt, and that right now is $29.8 million. So if we,
This is the same, basically the same capacity and dollar amount as the one we just, the Southwest.
Southwest is
Harrisburg.
940, isn't it?
940.
Southwest is 940, Harrisburg.
Oh, it is
It's
bigger.
more,
Okay.
yeah.
did I answer all the questions? The timeline?
So- To have money by November 1st, you have to start doing all the, I know we always back into those dates,
We do.
so
We do. I'd have to get
Can-
with our underwriter, but I'm
I
going to
wouldn't
say
hold you
this
to
is
these dates, I'm just
June.
trying to get an idea.
We'd have to have a calendar in place by July and start our proceedings with the, have to go, each month we have to do this resolution of finding, a reimbursement agreement, agency agreement, those type things would have to take place. And right now, the school is not in our name, so we're going to have to get, the school is in the Board of Education's name, so we'll have to get that into our name.
Yeah, when I said I went to school there, it gives you an idea, it's an old school. It's been very, it's still in good shape. I mean, I will say, I think there's been a lot of effort, things have been updated and everything else. So, I don't know, it depends on what we go in there, so, I mean, well, I don't wanna hold you anything. I would like to know, I guess, in relation to all this, because I would not, I personally, I wouldn't wanna see that building to sit empty for 10 years. However, I fully understand what the county manager is saying based on all the budget presentations so far and how everything has been squeezed already. And it's very difficult already with what the budget is. So then we turn around and add this on top of it, makes it even harder and much more difficult. And we make that decision in a couple weeks also. Because when you set a tax rate, you set it for the year. So I don't know when the timing would be, when the first payment would be due, if the first payment would fall before July 1 of the next fiscal year. So it's another thing. But I would like to have, it would help me to know some thoughts about what would go into the current facility. I have heard rumors, but that doesn't mean that any of it's true, so I won't even say it. But I would like to know what that plan would be, because I don't think any building sitting empty, even for a year, is a good thing for a school building. And I would really hate to see that building bulldozed. I would much rather see it repurposed, if at all possible. It's an odd layout. There are quite a number of elementary schools that have odd layouts, such as Mount Pleasant Elementary, which I have stated before needs to be replaced too. And I don't think that's even on the 10-year schedule, but.
That was only 40 years old, so we still got, that's only 40 years old.
Oh, it's only 40 years old. Our Brown's closer to 65,
Yes.
would be my guess. I was somewhere 65 to 70.
It's just hitting its stride.
Actually,
There you go.
It turns 50 this year. It was built in 1958. Our Brown was in 1958.
No, it turns 60 this year. I was born in
60, I'm sorry,
58.
60.
Thank you very much. So,
You just told how old you are.
that's okay. I tell students all the time, I'm thankful to be as old as I am because it means I'm still here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was one of the first, it was 5 years old, I guess, when I went to school there. So, but it is in really good shape. I've seen some other 60, 70-year-old buildings that are not in very good shape. So kudos for the maintenance of these old facilities, but I think it's one that could be repurposed. So in the discussion of all of this, and especially with what the county manager said, more of those decisions would be helpful in making sure this would open in 2020 versus 2021.
It is a unique structure because at the time it was built in 1958, it was kind of ahead of its time. It was actually all precast. It was kind of interesting. That's why it's structurally very sound. Functionally, there's some issues there. So obviously, being able to maintain the structure and strip it out and come back with a new program within that structure would be advantageous because it is a good structure. Unlike, say, Coulter & Webb or Beverly Hills, which was built totally different and has a totally different type of structure that's not quite held up as well. So that's what I think.
Yeah, Coulter & Webb's a bit older. I don't know if you know when that one was built. I don't know when
I
Coulter
think
Webb was
it's-
built, but one of the
Tim
buildings
knows it's 80.
is
80.
quite older, so.
It was actually built in the early 50s. It was 49 actually, and then it was 51. I think one was built
49.
49 and the other 51. So. Yeah, and they had one section I built back in the early 70s. I think that new wing was built in the 70s. It's the new wing.
I think probably the bigger question is, than all these details is, what happens if we said, we can't do it? We gotta bump it out at least a year so that we can package this debt with some other projects. What happens then?
We just need to make sure we're aware of that so we can make our demographers and make sure that the redistricting process would reflect that.
Right, so that's they're already doing that work. They're already planning based on R. Brown McAllister being replaced. And so we told them about, it's been probably a month ago, they said, we got to know, you got to draw the line in the sand and say whether you're going to do it and open it in August 2020, and we're going to plan for that, or we need to know that you're not going to do it. And so we went in with the idea that it was still within the plan, within the 5-year plan, and opening in August 2020. So if we're not going to do it, we really need to let those folks know yesterday, really, so that they can.
I guess the more important question, their issue is distribution. Who goes where?
Yes.
Doesn't change the total at all. Looking at the total perspective, I mean, I heard you say earlier today, there's 197 mobile units currently in use in Cabarrus County Schools. And if we were to delay the addition of this 440 seats for a year, what would be the ramifications of that? With the new elementary school that's currently under construction, would we be able to absorb those students in existing facilities? Not comfortably, I'm sure. The other issue that you guys have pointed out and we're all aware of is the changes in the minimum classroom size, which that will be occurring in stages over that same time period. So the maximum number of classes that we have now is going to accommodate fewer students because of the state rules than they used to. So I guess we have to incur additional expense on the front end if we stay on schedule. Can we weigh that against, are we going to have to purchase more mobile units to
Certainly.
accommodate, or are we going to be able to hold them in the buildings? Do you have a feel for that, or?
It's going to depend on this realignment plan, redistricting
Right.
plan. So what's going to have to happen if we say we've got to delay this one more year? We'll delay it. They'll restructure all of the students. We will have to most likely have additional mobile units that we wouldn't had. Then we'll have to redistribute everyone again.
Right.
And so we're going to upset parents and students, and then the following year, we're going to upset a lot of parents and students again. So the idea of taking care of the class size issue, doing one realignment so that parents and students are not disrupted multiple times, works much better in the plan. But obviously, we understand money concerns and the lack of it.
And to answer your question about the classroom size was going to cost us 94 classrooms.
Over 4 years.
Over 3 years, until 2020.
94 classrooms. How many classrooms would there be in this new school that we're talking about right now?
Well, the one that we're building right now at Hickory Road Elementary's got 45 classrooms.
So we're talking about 2 schools.
2 full schools, yes, sir.
And the one at Hickory Ridge is larger than the one we're talking about here.
Yes, sir. And of those 197 you're talking about, 103 of them are at the elementary school level. So, half of those kids are at the elementary school level in mobiles right now.
So that's 2,500 kids?
Yes, sir.
In those.
2,500 kids in
at the
mobile?
elementary school level, yes, sir. We, right now, are currently, we've added 13 classrooms. Of the ones we added this year, mobiles, 13 of them go to the elementary school level just to help accommodate the class size change for this coming year. Next year, we will probably do the same
Many
because
more.
it steps up all 3 years to 2020 is when the class size is the smallest based on the step size. But by having a new one come on board, and maybe this one coming on board, you'd have almost 60 new classrooms that help accommodate, offset the fact that you had to have 94 extra. So, you know, it does reduce your mobiles.
Right.
But you don't, pretty much.
But we're still not gaining much.
No, but we're gaining all we can. I mean, this is really.
We're trying, the realignment, the folks that did the realignment said that we're spending the next 5 years catching up.
Right.
So we're so far behind. If we can get caught up in the next 5 years with the 5-year plan, then we might get ahead a little bit in the 5 to 10-year plan. But we're still
Because we're
behind.
looking at projections of growth leveling off a bit.
Leveling off.
So for those persons who might say, you know, you're just going to have to leave the old schools alone and focus 100% on new capacity. If we went out to some other area and built another new elementary school, standalone, then we would get some capacity, but then we would have a whole bunch of locally funded positions that we would have to add that we would not have to add if we enlarged an existing school. Is that correct?
So, yes, we have, you know, if you add a school on the perimeter, you're going to have a principal and all your unique positions.
State will pay for the principal,
The
right?
state will pay for the principal, but not all of the other, the AP, the instructional facilitator, the media, the guidance, all of those type of positions. You're going to add unique positions, your SRO, your nurse, those type things. You already have that at R. Brown McAllister.
Right.
So we're not going to need to add a unique position. If we leave R. Brown McAllister and add to the exterior somewhere where the growth is, we're going to have additional locally paid positions.
Right. Lots of questions.
Just go ahead and add, I want to make sure you understand where the money's coming from too. The 856, Susan, correct me if I'm wrong, this is what was left over in the middle school
Mount Pleasant Middle
project,
School.
unspent construction budget.
Right.
The 505,000 is half of the school contingency that was not used at all. What we are proposing, that was to be proposed to use for asphalt and parking repairs at Mount Pleasant High Schools. So if we move it to here, those projects are going to get pushed out. And then the next item, you'll have the other half of that. And then the 119 is out of your board contingency. Just want to make sure everybody understood that as we move forward. So.
Okay, explain for a minute the $885,000 Mount Pleasant Middle School. That was money that was budgeted for construction that wasn't spent.
Correct.
I just read a comment by somebody this week that said, we have never had a project ever that didn't go over budget, so.
Sometimes it feels that way, but it's not necessarily true.
So this is an indicator, that one did not go over budget.
Cox Mill High School did not go over budget.
Yeah.
Mr. Morris, I do want to interject one thing. Of the 885,000, over 400,000 was contractor sales tax savings.
Okay,
Normally, we set that aside and help pay for debt service.
right.
So that will not be able to be used for debt service.
debt,
So
okay.
it wasn't a true $885,000 savings. Some of
So-
that was contractor sales tax
So it
savings.
was only about half of that.
About half of it.
But
Yeah.
we're still under budget.
Yes,
so-
yes,
Right,
yes.
still under
I did want to,
budget.
I did want to point that out, that we
Just take
normally,
it.
we always like to, state that we're going to use that contractor sales tax savings towards debt service, and that will not be the case this time,
Right.
if it's used for this project.
And Mr. Chairman, for the record, the same architect did Mount Pleasant Middle and Cox Mill High School. The two projects that we just referenced came in under budget.
Okay.
For whatever it's worth, same firm.
Okay, other questions?
Yes, so we do, like we've done the high school, then we did the elementary school, now we're back to this school. So it's like, we know you need the space, I get it, but we never get a chance to catch our breath financially. So assuming that we vote to go ahead and do this, are we going to have a chance to catch our breath before? So I mean, somewhere in there, we're going to have to find a solution because we can't keep up with the growth. So at what point do we figure out what that's going to look like? I mean, I know I don't mean that as, it's your fault that this is happening. You're just trying to accommodate the growth. I get it, and we're trying to help accommodate what you need,
That's
but
a good
the
question.
rubber's meeting the road here, and something's got to give. So what is that going to be?
So for us, as we look at our 5-year plan and we look at what the demographer has told us, it looks to be after we get this first 5-year plan leveled out, then we think that's when we'll be able to catch our breath.
But I don't think we're going to survive your 5 years.
Your 5,
So I think we're
understand.
going to have to do something before that 5-year plan. So what does that look like? And how do we come together and figure it out together? Because I felt like I hoped at the school board and the joint meeting we had, maybe we would, but we really didn't. And we all
did.
just keep going.
We changed the high school and the middle school, pushed the high school out a year. So we did push some projects.
And please understand, this is not anything against you guys. I understand what you're doing, but the rabbit's come out of the hat the last 3 or 4 years, and I think he's gone, So how are we going to figure this out? And I know
Sure,
you guys
sure.
meet all the time, but how are we going to do this?
Well, you've got several things that you're working on, and that is working, in fact, you had your meeting this morning at Brown McAllister to talk with our local legislators about the proposed statewide school bond or the school building project. I can't remember the technical name, but
Yeah.
that's it. So that's one option. The other option is pursuing the flexibility of the sales tax, quarter-cent sales tax. It's right now earmarked for transportation only, so we're asking for flexibility there. So that would be another option. Both
But are
of
they
those-
going to help us in 5 years, like in the time frame that we
Yeah.
need it to, do you think? If we can get it
From here, 5 years?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they could possibly help you in that.
before they come back again and we're
No.
trying to figure out the
It's
next?
gonna be tight. And then of course, you've got growth, and you've got a revow coming up. Not sure what that's gonna look like. Our tax administration office is looking at that now and starting the process, and has already been working on it for a couple of months now, so we'll know there. So, but yeah, and then the only thing left to do is to amend their schedule, and that would be the only thing. And then what are those impacts of amending that schedule?
And the good news with the demographer at this point in time, they will give us even a better picture of exactly how that growth is going to hit us. I mean, obviously now we're looking at, you add 2,000 housing units, you add so many apartment units, that sort of thing. You start adding, it's not really a true add. And this demographer is doing a very, very good job of helping us understand that there's a funnel there, and every year 2,500 kids go out that funnel for graduation, and then so many kids come in, and based on building, you have maybe more than come in than went out. So that's where your growth comes in. And he should let us know, Union County just went through a situation where they actually started losing kids in certain districts because they built out completely with their houses, and people stayed there. And after 10 years, their kids are out of school, but the house is still there, and no one moved back in to fill that funnel in the top. So we don't want to get ourselves in that situation, but he's helping us understand. So we have I think it's going to probably be more level than it would be looking at the peak, just on, because you ride around now, you get overwhelmed with construction. It's just house, and they're continuing to build them. I don't see that slowing down unless the economy drastically turns. But then again, it's not quite as bad as it could be, since some people are coming here and like it here and stay here, and they don't quite leave and open their house up for somebody else to move in with kids and that sort of thing. So
And the reason, Commissioner Poole, the reason I said 10 years on maybe potentially R. Brown sitting there is that the other thing we're going to need to do, you as a board and their board as well, we've got to address the growth. So that growth is what's going to demand those monies in order to go back and make these older schools usable for another purpose within the system, which makes good sense. That doesn't address growth. So we've got to we need to continue to have these conversations. Where's the importance of each one of these projects? And if there's some that we can push out, then I would recommend the ones that don't address growth until we can get a handle on this and make sure that we have funding in place. Is that fair to say?
Fair enough.
Okay.
And I know that you mentioned, when y'all made the presentation about the flattening out at some point, and you mentioned that might be the case for K-12, but the older people that are liking it and staying here, that's the other issue that we have to deal with. And it's not just
That's the
senior
senior
centers,
centers
and
and
it's not just
parks.
senior centers and parks. I mean, it's bigger than that, and it, you know, we're gonna have to, in the volunteer fire department issues that we have, and how to, you know, this takes up a whole lot of our time, effort, budget, and everything. But we also have to look at that area to see, and then a couple items down, I want us to start looking at the other end of the spectrum, which is that birth to kindergarten. So, and what that's gonna entail, which I don't know the answer to that yet, which I'll speak on in a little bit, but, you know, so building for growth is important, but I think we also have to look at building for safety in some issues. And that you may not add seats, but we may have to do some stuff for safety purposes.
That's why the older schools are being replaced, so the other buildings are gonna.
I understand. I mean, I do understand that, but I'm just saying there's some that we could extend their lives with some modest amounts versus the 29.8 million for a new, or I think Harrisburg is more like 35, one of the last I saw, once you
Total
start
budget.
adding everything in there, so, yeah, and that's just gonna keep going up too, so. One more question. Since you mentioned, as you asked, when are we gonna take a breather, and you said 5 more years, and you've pushed a little bit out, but what is it looking like over the next 5 years that we are truly going to have to, not truly, but the next 5 years, what is in that? Just a reminder, because I don't have my book with
Sure.
me, of
Yeah.
what things fall in that next 5 years.
On our 5-year plan, and obviously, we work together to make sure that we can get what we need, but after this R. Brown McAllister, there's a new middle school, then a high school, then the downtown elementary school #2, which we'll refer to as Coltrane Webb, which whether it's on that property or a separate property, and then we have land bank for another high school. So that would be all within the next 5 years.
Plus, you have $100 million plus of deferred maintenance.
Yeah, correct.
So that's high school 75 million, middle
At
schools.
least.
Oh, you need to bump that up to 100 million by the time we get
Okay.
it.
By the time we get there.
So like you're talking 200 million in 5 years, and we're sitting here saying we can't do.
1.5.
Don't forget, the courthouse is gonna be approximately
Right, I'm just saying
90
just
million.
schools, yeah, so just schools alone.
Right.
So we're gonna have to get together between now and pretty quickly and come up, because the 5-year plan, we're not gonna be able, I mean, even if the sales tax gets done, that's still, like I say, there has to be a referendum, correct?
Correct,
So that would, at earliest November, which would mean the next year.
yeah.
And the state bond's probably gonna take another year longer than that if it goes through, correct?
That's the way it looks right
Yeah.
now, yes.
So with that said, that's 2 of those 5 years where we got very little, if any. So how can we possibly meet that 5-year plan? So I think
Well,
the school board and the county have some talking to do among us, because it's not that we don't want to do it, it's just that numbers-wise, it just doesn't work.
Right.
But, I mean, you still have to educate kids and put their butts in a seat, I get it. But somehow we gotta figure out something.
I'm sorry.
And not just keep talking about a 5-year plan like we've got the money to do it.
We don't say when that 5-year ends. The new high school, would that be replacing Northwest that was talked about, or would that be a new one? So that wouldn't completely, if it's replacing Northwest, it's not, I don't know, 1,600 seats. I don't remember what high schools are going now.
Right now, that high school is 1,300, and we propose to build another one, 18. And that would add 500 seats to the northern area, which does seem to correspond pretty well with the demographic growth in that area.
So that would be one.
That would be.
This is a great way to start our meeting. I mean that in the nicest of ways. I don't have any animosity against either of you, and Tim and I have known each other. He helped with
Too long.
my little children, so.
Like I say, you can't
or
help
my
it,
kids
but-
when they were little.
But together somehow, we've got to all work and figure it out, because talking about the 5-year and the 10-year like it's just gonna happen, I don't see how it's gonna just happen. We're gonna have to figure out something. Not to repeat myself.
Well, I certainly agree, and, you know, to expand a little bit, particularly for people watching on television, about the discussions that we've had. We met earlier today at R. Brown McAllister. A number of us were there, primarily to meet with our General Assembly members to talk about the importance of the statewide school bond, the impact that it would have on Cabarrus County. What we have requested, excuse me, was that be on the ballot this November. We've heard varying reports as to whether that is likely to happen or not, but that would give the citizens of North Carolina an opportunity to vote on a school bond statewide. That would mean about $37 million for Cabarrus County schools if it passed, and about $3.5 million for Kannapolis City Schools. So that would be a huge boost to what we're trying to do. Then of course we've talked about the local option sales tax. Things are looking promising on that. That also would be a vote of the citizens. They would have an opportunity to vote for or against a 0.25% increase in sales taxes here in Cabarrus County. If they pass that, that would be an additional approximately $8 million annually that would be available to the county for these purposes and for debt service payments or capital construction. The most appealing thing to that is we have two opportunities to raise funds to meet these obligations, and one is property tax and the other is sales tax. When we increase property taxes, which we're having a modest property tax increase proposed this year, that affects only Cabarrus County residents. When we have a sales tax, like we're talking about here, that big chunk of that sales tax is paid by the tourism that we've been able to develop here in the county, and the Exit 49, Concord Mills, all the visitors that come to Charlotte Motor Speedway would be contributing to our local economy, to our local education expenses. So that's something that if authorized by the legislature in Raleigh, then it's going to be our responsibility to talk to the people in Cabarrus County and say, this is what this means, this is what the alternatives are, and to tell the school system story. These are the needs that exist and why, and the schedule. So those two things could help us with it. Neither of them are going to solve this 5-year plan, but those would certainly be huge steps in the right direction to help us with that. So I will repeat that many times, probably every meeting from now on, because it is important, I think, for the general population to understand what we're dealing with and how we're trying to manage it. So, more questions? I'm sure we'll probably write down a big, long list of additional questions for our regular meeting in 2 weeks, so be prepared.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have Kannapolis City School repaving request, and Susan Fearington will tell us about that.
We just completed talking about the Mount Pleasant Middle School contingency money. We did have $1,005,086 left in that contingency, and we're proposed to use part of that for the R. Brown McAllister, the agenda item we just spoke about. And for an additional $500,000 that's left, we would like to use that $500,000 and do 1/2 of the paving request from A.L. Brown High School. That's in the CIP list for this year, and it was not projected to be funded for FY19, so we found that this might be a good use of the money. So $500,000 would get them half of their paving request that's much needed at the high school. Questions?
Yeah, I have one. I don't know if you can, this would maybe more for Will, or, but he's not here. So when we look at the proposal, and they're not asking for money to actually do the project. They're asking for us to set a budget for them to do the project, because there's not a bid. And why don't we have, that's the part I don't really grasp. They should have gone out, they've gotten 3 paving bids, and then we should be shouldn't the money we appropriate be based on a bid that's been received? I will preface that, but I get confused sometimes going from private sector to public sector, and this may be part of that's not the way it has to be done. But that part is just a little bit confusing to me. We've just got a dollar amount that we say, we're going to give you, and then they go out and do the project instead of having a bid in their hand. You may have missed, I think you were.
Yeah, I heard some of it through the wall.
Okay. Well, I
But
know I'm
we're
loud.
not
I didn't know I was
proposing-
that loud.
We're not no, the speakers are coming out of that room there. So we're not proposing to just give them money. It's going to be based on that, and then Rowan County is going to participate in this project as well. This is only a portion of this money here will only do a half of that parking lot across the street from their main campus. They've got every single road on the campus pretty much that needs to be replaced.
The 500 does half. 500 does half?
They think it's going to get close to half.
But that's what- I
Half of
guess
the
that-
parking lot, or
Parking
half
lot.
of the paving needed.
That's the parking lot
Okay.
across the street.
So where's the other
where,
half? Where are they getting the other half from?
They don't know yet, but I think they have requested funds from Rowan County.
So being in the private sector, how long's a bid good for?
Typically, rule of thumb is 30 days, especially if has involved with asphalt. But you can get one, and they'll have the price index on it, and they'll just base it on that, and then when that changes, the bid will change. But
But I was just saying, that's probably why they wouldn't have a bid. But if we were to do this and stick the money, we keep the money, it's just earmarked for this. And then we would say, go and, tell me if I'm wrong.
Correct.
We would say, Kannapolis City Schools, go and get a bid, and then, so that it's roughly half of what you think you need to get done, and then we make sure the bid's right before we say fully to proceed, and then you'd come back for the actual budget amendment to pay it or something. There's other steps to it, but I think that may be answering
Okay.
your question
Well,
of
yeah, and that's what I
why
was-
you don't have a bid now, because it's only good for 30 days, and at this point, they wouldn't know that there was even a possibility of,
Yeah.
Have it
They've
happen.
been requesting these funds for many years now for this parking lot. So the funds came available with a portion of that contingency coming from Mount Pleasant High School. So in order to use, we had the cash here, instead of putting it into the budget and creating a higher number on the budget, we were proposing to say, okay, let's take half, give it to A.L. Brown for that, and the other half was gonna go to Mount Pleasant to fix some of their roads as well. They just used that 500,000 to go towards the new school. So
Okay.
this may be, they haven't bid it out, but this amount of money only end up maybe only doing a third of the parking lot. Or it may be a little more than half. They haven't bid it out, but they know that this is how much money they got.
And that answers my original premise is basically, we're just setting sort of a budget constraint. And then
Yes.
they're gonna go from there, and this just guarantees that at least that amount of money is sitting there when they come back.
Because it's been on the list for many,
Okay.
like Mike said, many, many years, and
Yeah.
this is one way to start eating away at their need.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure I understood exactly how that works.
Sure.
You keep referring to them coming back, but I don't believe they come back. This
No.
is a budget revision that will be put in place, and the money is available once they issue a contract to move forward. It would not come back in front of the board a second time.
But you would have the bid or the
But-
invoice or the whatever, yeah.
But there's a cap. They can't go any
Okay.
higher than that. So what they're gonna have to do is, if you put the money there, then they're gonna go out and say, okay, here's the parking lot. How much can we do with this amount of money?
No doubt they're coming back if it goes over the million. The problem, the question I'm
they
asking,
only-
if
they're
it's
only-
under a million, and we don't ever see them again, what happens to the
Now,
difference?
We
they're
only,
gonna do as much as they can do of that parking lot with this amount of money.
Okay.
And they're
Why am I hung
guesstimating
up on a
that
million?
may be about half.
their CIP
Okay.
request is $1 million.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm clear.
Well, and what they're
Clear as
requesting to
mud.
repay
Right.
is there are different pieces as well. There's a upper parking lot, a lower parking lot, and a lot of different pieces that they can figure out how to put them together. Or they might get lucky and Rowan County will say, well, we'll pay the balance. Okay, additional parking lot questions.
I will just make one statement that I agree that across the road from their high school, that's a mess. So I won't argue that. And I'll just make an aside that I drive the other driveway every single day, and the big trucks went in and out of that one building Mount Pleasant Middle School. And I was hopeful that some of that pothole that's already been replaced has already been knocked out again. So I'm not saying anything bad. I know that they need funding, and I know they need that. And I don't know when the other parking lots all over the district are going to get any attention, because it's very hard to do parking lots when you need seats. So I'll say that much. But I know I bump through the other one on a daily basis.
Okay, any more parking lot discussion? Okay, we will move to the next item, 4.3, creation of Early Childhood Task Force, and Commissioner Poole will lead us in that discussion.
Thank you, and thank you very much. I was at a professional development, and it's an application process that I had applied for numerous times and never gotten. So it was one of those things when you're told you've been accepted and you have no choice of the date. That was the date that I went to, and it was a phenomenal week of training. So it was very helpful to me, and will be in the future. But I did miss the meetings. Asked Blake to read the next page on our agenda. That was the statement. So Pam and I both attended, along with, I will call out my friend Jackie Whitfield back here. The three of us went to the Institute for Emerging Issues Forum back in February that was focused on early childhood education, and they called it Crib to Career. I am not an expert in early childhood. I think I know a fair amount about high school, and in another month I'll start learning a lot about 5th grade up to 12th grade. But the people that I have listed here are either entities or people who've been recommended to me who do know a lot about early childhood. And just as we need to focus on senior citizens, we also need to focus on those who can't speak for themselves, which would be birth to pre-K. And we have a large population, and when they come into whatever kindergarten, 1st grade school that they are assigned to, and are supposed to be on grade level by 3rd grade, it is extremely difficult if there has not been some intervention being done before that. So my proposal is that we create a task force that will begin to look at this issue, and they will make reports back to this board on the issues that they feel are most important. And there will be additional people, I would presume, added to this list that this group will recommend. And hopefully, kind of like the Mental Health Advisory Board that we have, there's a lot of experts there, and a couple of us go to that meeting, not as experts, but to hear what's going on. I envision it being similar to that. And the Institute did pick four counties in North Carolina for a pilot program, and they were Tier 1 and Tier 2 counties, and we are Tier 3, so therefore we didn't qualify. However, we do have problems, concerns that need to be addressed when it comes to early childhood. So I would appreciate this board appointing the task force so that they can get started to do research, and I think just like mental health, that was an opportunity to bring all these people around a very large table in this room, and it facilitated them talking to each other instead of being in their silos. And I think this will do the same thing. So that's my request, that we begin looking at this, and this group will come back with recommendations. And I'm happy to answer questions that I can. Again, I am not an early childhood education person. I'm not an expert in that area. There are a few people back here, if y'all want to stand up, who are some people who are experts in this area. So if I get caught, if you have a real difficult question, one of them might be able to help me out. Thank you all for coming. I didn't know everybody was coming today, and I met a few nice people today. So I'll say, do you have any questions?
I do have one, if I might. Chairman
Yes,
Morris
ma'am.
and I spent several hours last week with several of these people talking about
Oh,
the Smart
did you?
Start. Yep, yep.
Okay, I didn't know that, I'm sorry.
And so, well, that's okay, but I guess my question, this group would look at the Smart Start program as one of those things and kind of make sure that it's on the right track and implemented and moving forward? Is that one of the areas that you see this task force would shepherd?
Head Start.
I mean, Head Start, sorry,
Yeah.
yep.
Well, I'm not an expert in Head Start, and my vision would be that this group would come together, and the first thing they would do is determine, for example, if that's an issue in the county, which I do believe it is. These are the issues that we think are the ones that we need to investigate to begin with. And then who else needs to join in that effort? So I would think that that would be one, but I can't tell you that that would be one, if that makes sense. I think these experts would say, these are areas that we have concerns. All of these people are service providers, except for us, the three of us. The rest of them are service providers. And so I think they're gonna come and say, this is what we see, and this is where we think we need to get more information. And then they can come back to this whole group. I mean, we provide a forum for people, and they would have a forum to be able to express, these are concerns we have, and this is where we hope to move forward. And so, yeah, I would think it would be, but I don't want to speak for the group until we can actually get together. And I did not know that you had a meeting and don't know what you discussed. So, but that's good that you had one. So that's yay, that's a good thing.
With those people that stood up, I think that'll be part of the discussions. So, correct me if I'm
Well,
wrong.
I think you're
Chairman Morris.
probably correct.
I would certainly think so, and to expand on that just a little bit, you said you didn't know what we talked about, and I think we should share what we talked about with the public. You know, in Cabarrus County, for quite a few years, we have had a Head Start program, which has operated for many years under the auspices of Cabarrus County Schools. It is a grant program. I'm depending on you folks that know what you're talking about to correct me if I say anything wrong. It's a grant program from the federal government to operate this Head Start program. There are certain qualifications for children to be enrolled in that program. It is primarily children that would not be eligible or may not have the resources for private pre-K, that sort of thing. About 2 years ago, the grant was withdrawn from Cabarrus County Schools, and we were very fortunate that the Partnership for Children picked up that grant. They were awarded the grant to operate Head Start. I serve on that board. We went through a very extensive process of training board members, and certainly Ann could go on for a couple hours talking about the process that we went through to get everything in order. The school has been operating on the Long School property in a modular unit back of the old original building that is owned by the federal government. The property is leased from Cabarrus County Schools for it to sit on. Ann Benfield headed up the process of getting that modular unit up to speed. There were floor coverings that were replaced. There were any number of different items that were taken care of. And we're talking about 2 years ago. All the mechanical systems were functioning, the heating, the air conditioning. I toured the building before it opened, and it looked great. So Head Start operated extremely well for that year. At the end of that year, there were discussions by a number of entities. It required a lot of cooperation with the school system as far as them hiring staff, teachers to work in the, so for whatever reason, there was a desire for the school system maybe to take that back over, to seek that grant. I think perhaps they did. The partnership stepped aside in order to facilitate that. The school system was not awarded the grant. The grant instead went to a private company who was supposed to be a transitional element to get the program, keep the program running. They came in, the build, you know, and I can say these things without fear of liability because I don't know anything. But this is the story that came about. And they found multiple problems with the building that we had just renovated, a long list. There were questions about this, questions about that. There were questions about underground storage tanks on the property that as far as we can determine, were documented that were removed. Others that were tested and found to be perfectly fine. Multiple issues such that the preschool never opened and has not operated for the entire year. There have been some home visits. Maybe they get a visit every other week. But so we've got this huge population of kids that were being served before that now are not being served. You know, to be, and of course, some of these folks over here are very passionate about it, which I absolutely support and agree with. To quote some of their comments is, you know, if we don't get these kids on the right track, we better start building another level to the jail, because that's eventually, and I totally support that and agree with it. So, you know, I say that for benefit of the public because we have, here's the question that someone asked me today in a discussion about that. They said, so who locally has oversight over that Head Start program? And I said, well, I don't know. I said, the Board of Commissioners has no decision-making authority over that program. We have no, we do not fund that program. The school system was just a recipient of the grant, so unless they are the grant recipient, they have no authority over the program. The Partnership for Children would be the same way. So, you know, the bottom line was, I don't know. I said, I don't think there is anybody. I think it is our federal elected officials, and Congressman Hudson's office has been instrumental and very diligent in helping us to try to find some answers to some of those questions to get it back on track. You know, our main focus is we want these kids to be served. So to have this task force that you have proposed to be a watchdog, so to speak, or to be involved in that process, I think would be extremely beneficial to all of us. And so I applaud that and hope that, and I feel sure with the people you've proposed that Commissioner Honeycutt's question about whether that would be an item or not, I can't imagine that it wouldn't be. So I think it's a great step, and I can see great benefits to our community from it.
Well, I appreciate you sharing all of that information. Bits and pieces of that I'm aware of, but not the whole thing. So I would say that the majority of the people in Cabarrus County didn't know any of that until you just shared it. So that's exactly what worries me, and should worry, I think, all of us. So, and, you know, there'll be more people than that. I've gotten a number of emails today, I guess the agenda being posted online and everything else. And I've gotten quite a few emails from people who were not specifically mentioned who said, I would like to be included.
I have gotten some as well.
That's pretty cool to know, with really nothing but an agenda being posted, to have people already saying this is important. So I don't know if that help, I would presume it will be discussed at great length. And I hope there's other things discussed. I don't think that should just be that,
Right.
but I think that's obviously something that's, right there. And there are a lot of, I think there are a lot of areas that are gonna be discussed. And I'm hoping, bless you, there'll be subgroups and the three of us will hold on tight and make sure that everybody knows what's going on. I just think that really is one of the great roles of being a county commissioner and having Channel 22 and having our wonderful PR department that likes to tweet everything out and, you know, inform the public. And YouTube channel's great, because once you can find it, I don't mean that in a negative way, but I had to hunt a little bit to find part 2 of Thursday's meeting. So that was just me. That was probably the operator and nothing else. So, you know, I'll be bold and say if everybody's in favor of it and y'all want to give us a 2-week head start, you can amend the agenda and go ahead and approve it tonight. But if you want to wait till next 2 weeks, then a consent agenda is fine.
Yeah.
And I can get in touch with these people and let them know that it appears that it will be on the consent agenda and we shouldn't have any problem and try to go ahead and get a July meeting set. So I don't want to waste time trying to get a meeting set with as many as we can to get started and addressing exactly what you said.
Yeah, and maybe we should leave it on the agenda as is, since Commissioner Shue was not able to be here tonight. But I think it'll be a wonderful opportunity in that one of the questions in regards to the Head Start situation that I've been asked was, what can you do about it? And my answer so far has had to be, well, we can talk about it, like I just did, but that's about the extent of it. So I think with an organized group behind it, I think with the support of Congressman Hudson's office, which I believe we have, I think we can make something positive happen. I think there even is a conference call scheduled for tomorrow to talk with some folks that are interested in picking up that grant and opening this fall. That was our primary concern is, you know, are we going to lose another year? So hopefully that will be averted. So thank you very much. Any other questions for
So we
Commissioner
probably need to add
Pearson?
Ms. Lozier to this list then of
Absolutely.
the initial group, since
Yes.
you made that comment, so.
Yes.
That's what I was gonna mention too. If it's okay with the board, we can open it up. They can start filling out the electronic applications and even just put proposed early childhood board or whatever on there. And that way you'll have some names to include in your final decision when
I
you
think that'd
approve
be
it. you
great.
can approve
That would
those
be great
members.
if nobody minds that. I can get an email out to the people, and I don't know all of these people that are listed, I'll say that too. I had some people recommend, because I knew Mary Frances Wall Center and the McKnight Child Development Center needed to be included, but I don't know any of these 3 people, but I had the names recommended. So, but that would be great if everybody's okay with me doing that and you're okay with me having them, explaining to them how to go online and fill out that form so that we can get moving. That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, next item, 4.4 from DHS, HCCBG funding plan, and we are happy to have Anthony Hodges with us.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm going to talk really quick about on the other end of the spectrum now, talking about Home Community Care Block Grant, the funding plan, which is, as y'all know, it's funding that comes from the Older Americans Act federally, and it's for program individuals that are over 60 years old and older. The money passes through the state and into the Area Agency on Aging, and there's state money added, and then once it comes to the counties, the County Home and Community Care Block Grant Advisory Committee decides what programs to find and to fund and how much money to put in each of those programs. Here in Cabarrus County, we fund transportation, in-home aid services, adult daycare and adult day health, congregate nutrition, Meals on Wheels, housing and home improvement, and senior center operations. This year, and normally when the committee gets together in February, the state usually doesn't give out their actual allocation. Last year it was September before we got the FY18 allocation. So usually we do our decision based on what the current year's allocation is, and then the committee decides, once the actual allocation comes out, what to do with that. You know, if the numbers are higher or lower. And this year, once the funding was divided, they determined or voted on the fact that if it was less than a 5% difference, then the percentage would just be spread across the percentage, or the percentage would be spread across each program or each provider. And the state actually did come out with their allocation in April this year, and our numbers did go down a little bit. Last fiscal year 18, this year, we received 798,808. And for fiscal year 19, it's 796,428, so about a 0.3% decrease. And that is without the county match. There's a 10% required county match. And again, the committee in February voted to leave the allocations as far as percentages that each program got the same as fiscal year 18. So that's what we've done. So those programs, and like I said, each of them are reduced 0.3%. Based on that. Now I will tell you, like I said, this is what it is, the funding now. I did find out last week from the AAA that the federal government, with their new budget, that has provided more money for this program, but it was too late to get it to have the advisory committee meetings for the counties or to get it on your agenda. But so I'll probably be coming back in a month or two. We're looking at, with the county match, about another $54,000 for this program. And then Friday I got an email saying the state may be putting in some more money, so we may get some more money once we get all the numbers in. But that'll probably be in the July or August meeting. I'll probably come back for with a revision.
Excellent. Questions for Anthony? So the meal lunch plus
Yes, sir.
sites,
Mm-hmm.
which someone was asking about just recently, that program is funded with these funds?
Yes, yeah. It gets
In
some-
total or in part?
In part.
In part, yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Congregate meals, that's
Yes,
the
sir.
term you used, I think.
Yes, sir. Yeah, for this coming year, without the county match, congregation would get a little bit over $107,000.
Right. And so those, for folks that may not be familiar, are how many sites across the county?
We have 5 sites.
5 sites, 5 different sites across the county where seniors
Mm-hmm.
can go for lunch 5 days a week.
Yes, sir.
And that includes some programming, some entertainment, some educational programming, some advocacy. It's just great program. It's a great use of funds, which for a lot of seniors provides that only socialization opportunity that they have. So yes, great. Of course, there's a lot of other things in this list as
And
well.
What age defines senior in that?
For this purpose, it's through the Older Americans Act, it's 60 plus.
60. Okay.
So Commissioner Poole qualifies, since she just told us her birthday a while ago.
I got 2 more months. Thank you very much, and then I qualify.
So will it be full before Commissioner Poole gets there? So my question to you is, do you have
You
wait
already
lists
are.
for those programs, or?
Some programs do have waiting lists. Our in-home aid program does, our transportation program does. Not all programs do.
Okay.
But, so there are programs that are open. So.
Right. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
I'm next also.
Okay. All right, next item, 4.5, Human Services Transportation Maintenance Contract. Anthony again.
Okay, and actually this time I'm going to bring up Stan Parnell and Jessica Healy. There are 2 of our transportation supervisors, and they know much more about this than I do, so I will. But our first one, it is a contract for the maintenance of the vans for the transportation program, our transportation vans, CCTS. And we went out for bid for the contract this year for the maintenance, and GMAX is the company that bid. That's who we currently have, and they are the only company that submitted a bid. We're pleased with their service, but we're asking for permission to go ahead and contract with them again.
Okay.
Just to add to that, we, with the one bid to adhere to federal regulations, we had to resubmit the bid a second time, And then, of course, it was still just one bid, and at that time, we could accept one. With federal regulations, you couldn't accept with just the first bid of being one person, you know, with that. So, and it's the same thing, you know, their contract is from 2014, when they've been with us since then, and it expires June the 30th. So this would take effect on July the 1st.
And obviously, you're pleased with the service you're receiving.
We are pleased. They give us, our service comes first with any other service. So when we call them, they usually take care of what we need right then.
And this is a local Cabarrus County
Yes.
owned and
Yes.
operated
It
company,
is.
which
It's
is
located on Highway 49.
Right.
Right below Walker Road, headed back towards Mount Pleasant from there.
Yeah, and just to, I was reading over this, and it's got their hours of operation, that sort of thing. And serving on the Transportation Advisory Board, I've asked the question before, why would a Cabarrus County transit vehicle be out on the road on Sunday afternoon at 5 p.m.? I saw that
Right.
yesterday. So,
Well, in that case, they also, part of their contract is the cleaning of the vehicles.
right,
So they have a guy that, one of their employees picks up the vans from our location, drives it, cleans it, drives it back. And the same thing, that probably is happening during the weekend, because they.
could happen
clean every
Saturday
vehicle.
night or
Right.
Sunday afternoon, or,
If you see them at 9 o'clock on the evening, it's probably, because he works, because we drive him during the day, so
Right.
he's cleaning and maintaining them at night or the weekends.
right. Yeah, to have that conversation may save us some phone calls. Man,
Right.
You're riding these vans around the county at 9 o'clock on Saturday night with nobody in them, you know, and that's the reason.
Right.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. And then Anthony Hodges, and the same team is up for the next one, 4.6, review and award contract for secondary transportation services.
Yes, sir. This is the same process. This is our contract for taxi services, which are used on, for overflow or for clients that we don't have enough van space for, or we can't fit in, or on weekends. And again, we put it out for bid, and like Stan said, we did a second bid on it too, because of making sure we got the one bid. And the bid we received is from TJ's Taxi, which is our current provider.
So you put it out for bid, and the hope would be you'd have 10 different people bidding, but only one person bid.
Right.
And so you open it up again to give anybody else that might be interested a second chance,
Yes,
and
sir.
still nobody else bid, right?
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Okay.
And some of these, they're not just taxi cabs, they're running vans. So a lot of the taxi companies and transportation companies don't have the kind of vans that they need to provide our service. That's why we have a limited number of people or companies.
That's correct. They don't have the lift vans available
Right.
for the handicapped folks that need to ride a lift up and down for wheelchairs and walkers and that type of service.
And a lot of the trips that you guys make, of course, are medical in nature, but specifically dialysis.
Yes.
And they operate how many days a week?
6.
6 days a week. So Monday through Saturday,
Saturday.
Yes, sir.
every day but on Sunday. So that, you guys have got to be there. I know we've had that discussion before on snow days.
Right,
Right.
They're open.
right.
And those patients depend on that. I mean, it's a life-saving process.
One situation with that too, since they are 6 days, we've started, our drivers are working on Saturdays now. We have 2 drivers, we operate right down the list to try to cut down taxi cost. And we're in the process right now of hiring and training auxiliary drivers that will help out in that situation, that can drive on Saturday and even on a Sunday. So you may even see vans running on a Sunday to eliminate taxi costs. We're trying to knock down on that cost
Right.
as much as we can.
Excellent.
And you mentioned dialysis. I have a friend that has to be there at 5:30 in the morning, so they open early.
There's
I
two
mean,
shifts.
Yeah, they open
Yeah.
early because it takes a long time for that process. And so that's another reason why you would see them really early in the morning and probably later in the evening too.
Well, our shift starts at 4 and usually get out, the last ones are around 6:30 when they get back in on normal days.
Okay, any other questions regarding the contract? Okay, then next up is 4.7, Transportation System Safety Plan. Same cast again.
Same one. So this is our last one. Yes, we have like I said, transportation system safety plan that's in place, and it's been in place for quite a while, and it's 6 different sections. It includes the emergency action plan, fire prevention, our maintenance plan, drug and alcohol, and security and continuity of operations. And we've had that plan in place, and Jessica's done a good job in keeping that together. But we had a state audit a couple weeks ago, and one of the things that we didn't have on that plan was commissioner approval. I think y'all approved it probably 3 or 4 years ago, but we didn't have it an up-to-date approval. So that's why we're bringing that forward to you again to get approval for that.
It is a well-documented plan, and quite a few pages of reading.
Jessica has it with her. If you
If
want.
anybody would like to
Yes,
read
quite a
it.
few pages. Questions about the transportation safety plan? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we move now to item 4.8 from EMS, renewal of non-emergency transport franchise agreement. Jimmy Lentz.
Good evening. It is the time of year, actually, in previous years, this has started in April and March, but with the transaction of our agency, we're a little bit behind. But it's the time of year to renew our franchise agreement with our non-emergency transport provider, being American Transmed. Transmed started operation within our county in the fall of 2015, so we're going on 3 years and have got a great working relationship and has done remarkable with the service they provide. In discussion with Deputy County Manager Marshall and County Attorney Mr. Cook on this, we have suggested, instead of doing this annually, to make this extended to 3 years. So we'll be starting the process at the June regular meeting for the public hearings. It's got to be heard over 2 consecutive months, so it'll be finalized at the July meeting. And if approved at that time, will be a 3-year franchise renewal for American Transmed.
Okay, questions for Mr. Lentz?
I would remind you, based on, for everyone, I'm Catherine Barr. I'm an attorney at Rich Cook's office, and during his absence, I'm stepping in and helping. And so I just wanted to kind of ask you, I guess, and remind you maybe that franchise agreements have a little bit different protocols on their renewal, either a new franchise agreement or a renewal. And they're required to be read out loud at 2 consecutive regular meetings.
Okay.
And I think, sorry.
Oh, no, they're joking because I had to read some agreement the other week that was 20 pages long or something out loud, but.
He does a great
Fun
job
stuff,
at
huh?
I don't think they're joking.
So, I would just keep that in mind.
it. Yeah, and
When you want
I've
approval,
got it here
you
tonight.
need to-
Mr. Morris or myself, we'll read it
Gotcha.
for the 2 consecutive meetings.
Great.
But we'll be starting with the June and then finalizing it at the July meeting.
Just out of curiosity, to go from 1 year to 3, you skipped over doing it every other year. Any particular reason, or is it sort of industry standard and we were just way above doing it every year? Or
I think
just
we were
wondered
maybe a
thought
little
process.
overboard on doing it annually, but to me personally, with the reflection of the quality of service and the agreement we've had since they've been in service since September of 2015, it's been remarkable. And I honestly think it's kind of, if we can do it for 3 years, it's beneficial to us to eliminate being here annually.
We were being cautious with the 1 year service and making sure that it was working well. It has worked very well. In fact, they're providing services to other entities, in particular to the hospital at this point. So we feel like it's warranted based on the performance they've given us.
So it was sort of a trial period.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, next up, item 4.9 from Finance, Limited Obligation Bonds, Susan Fearington.
After many months of speaking about the LOBS 2018, we're finally finished with the project. So just wanted to give you a little update on that. So on May 16th, we were did issue our limited obligation bonds totaling $54,680,000. They were sold on behalf, excuse me, of Cabarrus County to finance, as you remember, the Cabarrus County Schools and Elementary School. For them, also 20 mobile units and HVAC replacements at Mount Pleasant High School and J.M. Freeze Middle School. And for Rowan Cabarrus Community College and Advanced Technology Center and land for future expansion. Just to give you an update, the larger projects on that list will be outstanding for 20 years and the smaller ones for 10 years. And the debt will be paid off finally in 2038, just to give you an update. The total principal amount that will be paid will be the $54,680,000, and the total interest over those 20 years will be $15,883,000. So the grand total of the payments for this particular debt issue will be $70,563,000 over that 20 years. We had a net interest cost of 3.05%. And that is very comparable to our debt that we issued in November. We issued debt back in November, if you recall, for $70 million. And that was an interest rate of 3.03. So very, very similar, 3.05 and 3.03. Our new debt that we added to our FY19 budget that you will hopefully approve in 2 weeks will be $5,027,000. That's for the debt for this new LOBS. And that will, like I said, that was going to be added to your FY19 budget. As we talked about earlier when we talked about R. Brown McAllister, it does cost money to issue debt. For example, this issue that we just did in May, the cost of issuance was $501,000. That sounds like a lot of money, but we had just spent $808,000 when we issued debt back in November. So this year, for 2 debt issues, so we've spent $1.3 million in the cost of debt, just to put that into reality. And if you should recall, some of the things that includes are our bond counsel, our county attorney, the local government commission. We have to apply and pay a fee every time we apply to the local government commission. Our trustee, we have title insurance, and the placement, the underwriter. So all that is very costly. So this agenda item is presented so that we can make a final budget amendment, get everything in the right categories, and update our project ordinances for this. So is there questions about the debt?
I think Susan described it very well, as it's an expensive process. That's why we like to group multiple projects together as much as possible to have some economy of savings there if we're doing multiple projects at one time, because administrative costs are going to occur whether it's one project or 10 projects.
So would it be an accurate statement to say, if we've got this single debt, this single project, to delay that project for even 6 months or 8 months or whenever we have another project that we could package, we could potentially save $500,000?
Actually, it depends on the amount of the debt.
The amount of the debt?
Because just looking at those two that I was trying to compare, we borrowed $70 million versus the 50, and one cost $800,000 and one was $505. So, we're just going to have we are going to have duplicate expenses no matter what.
Right.
One thing we did save on this last issue was we had SunTrust Bank that was able to buy our whole debt issue. So we did not have to have the rating agency cost. So that would have added another, I'm going to say, $80,000 to the bottom line if we would have had to go out for a public offering.
Did you say 80,000?
It does. I would have to go back, each of them charge a little bit different amounts of money for, based on the size of the investment. So.
And that was for the rating
Rating agencies.
agency to assure our credit worthiness.
Right. They will basically call us and grill us. We have county management and myself in the room, and we ask about the economy and the school growth, or they ask questions about our financial statement and what our plans for the future. And then we do get a little bit of briefing of some of the questions that they're going to ask us, but they can add some other ones in. So it takes a while to prepare for those. But with the difference at this time when we had a private placement with a bank, because the rates were so good. But if we were to go out for public offering, then we would have had to have the rating agency calls. That's Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch.
I thought you were going to say 30,000, and I thought that was huge.
No, I can get some history, but it's,
Yeah.
each of them are quite
That's
expensive.
mind-boggling.
Quite expensive. And each time we go out for debt, we do an official statement, and that's sort of like a mini financial CAFR that we do once a year. So if we're doing it mid-year, then we have to sort of go ahead and get our finances in order and do some of the same things that we're going to be doing at year-end and update them.
So that cost figure that you presented does not include the massive amount of staff time that
Correct.
goes into that. So it's even more.
Correct.
Wow. Questions for Ms. Farrington?
One of the questions I think Mr. Downs asked earlier was when was the debt for the courthouse? The money will be needed in 2020, so I'll anticipate this first debt payment to be 2021 fiscal year. That was the largest chunk of money for our courthouse.
Right.
So if we can combine that with some of the schools, that would be most helpful. But
Okay, well, let's move to item 4.10, and Ms. Farrington again regarding electronic payments.
this is sort of a little bit of a history lesson, but if you know the pre-audit, there's a pre-audit. It's a statutory, like, internal control. And it also ensures that public funds are spent appropriately. So if we implement this pre-audit properly, then we can do some segregation of duties, making sure everything's right. It helps mitigate employee mistake, misappropriation, and even fraud. So the pre-audit is very important. So when we're going through and doing our purchase orders and our contracts, we always need to make sure that there's a pre-audit on the contracts and POs to make sure that there's money been encumbered, that it's in the budget, and everything checks out. So through the years, when the statutes were written, we've started doing things more electronically. And with the issuance of purchase cards and fuel cards, there's no way to pre-audit those expenditures. So when we go to finance officers' conferences, it's a big topic about, what are you doing? Because in the letter of the law, it would be like every time that the sheriff's department pulls up to the gas pump and they need to put fuel in that car, then that needs to be pre-audited. Well, that's logistically, we can't do that. I mean, they're open they're going 24 hours a day, the weekends. So it's always been in the back of our mind that there's got to be some way to do that. So as the agenda item states, the North Carolina legislature, they modify the statute, and they come up with some different things that we can do to help us get in the spirit of the law. So one of the things that I wanted to also give you an example was our P cards. I gave you the example of the fuel card, but the purchasing card. So every time that Michael Miller or one of his staff goes out to Lowe's, for example, they want to buy a part for, something in the building that's broke. We don't want them calling up the finance department and say, can I buy this? To be able to do that. So these procedures will help us get around this problem. So with all that being said, there's several steps that we need to take advantage of this new administrative code that they've just put out, and we were able to be notified by LGC on March 12th. So that we can get by with not affixing a pre-audit to each transaction if we follow certain procedures. And the first thing to do would be to pass this resolution, and it's attached in your agenda item. And what this is going to do is it's going to allow us to have procedures in place in the finance department to ensure that we're still following the rules, but we're just do not have to affix that stamp to every transaction. So one of the things I wanted to point out is after this, the things to exempt us from this pre-audit certification is to have this resolution. So that's in your agenda packet for June 18th, hopefully to pass there. Then we have to have an encumbrance system, which we do. We have our financial system. We can go in and encumber a particular amount, and so everything is set there. But we've tried to figure out, well, how can we encumber if we don't know the amount? So when I spoke with these local government commission, we came to a resolution, and what we're going to do, and I don't want to get into too many details, but each purchasing card person has a limit, a monthly limit they cannot go over. And so what we'll do is at the beginning of the fiscal year, we will go into each department, and they will have a PO that's issued for the amount of the 1 month limitation for all their employees to have in their system. So therefore, we have encumbered that money. They can't go over that amount of money, and then each month the bill is paid. So it's sort of like a revolving amount that's always sitting out there. At the end of the year, we'll cancel the PO, and we are under the limits of the law. Then this was suggested by the local government commission. Worked with them. The same thing being with our fuel cards. We will take the amount of an annual fuel purchase. We have our history. We will do a purchase order to the fuel company, and that way we're knocking against it each time we pay a bill. So we're able to meet that qualification. Did you already have a question?
I do have a question.
Okay.
I can wait till you're ready, though.
No,
But
that's
my
fine.
question was on the cards. Are they also, I should presume that there are only certain things they can buy with it? Until you said a fuel card, then I thought, well, if everybody just has a P card, and then they can only buy certain things with it. So
Right.
you might say you get to spend $500, but they can't spend $500 on new shoes if that's not an item that they can spend money on. So they know exactly in the different departments what they can and
They
cannot
do.
use that card for.
And each card can be set up with different commodities. So like we found like our DHS, for example, they might need to go to CVS Pharmacy to get film developed. Well, we don't want people going and buying drugs at the pharmacy, but there's certain things that you can and can't. And we also keep the limits as small as possible. So like one particular employee might have a $1,000 limit where another one might need $5,000. And for certain circumstances, we can temporarily boost it up to $5,000 and bring it back to $1,000. So that's carefully watched, and we put in safeguards so we don't forget to push that limit back down after the 1 month. So we have some pretty good safeguards, and have an employee who's excellent on being a private eye, and she will call you up and say, "What is this? Where's your receipt from?" So she's a very good steward of our money for the P cards and making sure we apply goes by the policy, P card policy.
And there's certain places that they can go to or not go to. I mean, this one's a good driver, and we got to Raleigh and back on the same tank of gas, and it was a good vehicle. But boy, when we got into Cabarrus County, she knew exactly where to go to fill it up. So I would presume that certain people can go out of county and some people
We can't.
wouldn't
we-
go out of county. I'm just asking. I'm sure
No.
you have plenty of limits and stuff to make sure that everything is done perfectly. So I'm not concerned about it. I'm just
No, this-
general
it's very
comments as far as
interesting.
how
The-
it works.
The actual fuel cards are by vehicle. But when you're putting in, when you go to fuel, it'll ask you for a code so you can put in your department number. So you can be tracked. As our fleet services have all kinds of records on that. However, we do have fuel rebates that we get. And so certain gas stations give better rebates than others. So the drivers know that. But if sometimes, like I'm thinking it's Exxon. So if Exxon's the better one that we get the better rate for, but it's not convenient to stop at an Exxon, then certainly we're not going to make them drive across town to go to an Exxon to save a few cents. So the people who use their fuel cards really keep up with it. But that, like I said, that does help us get not around, it helps us follow the rules. So make sure I say that. The next thing we do is we have to have a written policy. So that means that I will need to update our purchasing policy, which is an administrative policy, which after we have this resolution passed, I'll be doing that to make sure everything's in there for these electronic transactions. And the last thing that we need to do is to do a quarterly report to the board stating our expenditures, not necessarily just a purchasing card expenditures, but our total expenditures. Well, we do that monthly to you for your financial report, so we're already meeting that part of the requirement. So if we were able to do all these things, which I believe we are, So the first thing is to pass the resolution and then get our purchasing policy up to date, and we'll implement this new purchasing PO with our fuel cards and our pre-purchasing cards. Then we should be good for following this electronic problem that people have been facing. So I've actually spoke to some of the people who are going to try the same thing in this next coming year. So I think everybody's going to ramp it up and start at July 1st. So that's what we're wanting to do. Other questions? I know that was probably more than you wanted to know, but it's very interesting finding all this stuff out.
Okay, eventually that'll turn on. I do think it's very interesting, and I think it's interesting for the people who watch this to understand that there are lots of policies, procedures in place to make sure that the money that you have available, that we have available as Cabarrus County government, is properly accounted for and documented and spent for the right thing. So I think all of that's very important for people to understand that your department does a very good job
Thank you.
of tracking everything down. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Good explanation. I started out reading this thinking it had something to do with people paying their taxes with credit cards.
Okay.
So, okay, next item, 4.11, also from Ms. Farrington, updated capital project fund.
Okay, as you recall, we do this every year. Every year the annual budgets are passed on June, our third meeting in June, third week in June. But our multi-year projects, we do come to you when we have specific problems, or not problems, I should say, issues when we need to fund something. But throughout the year, we'll earn interest that we don't capture and increase our budget. So this is just a good way for my department to go through all their funds and make sure that the budgets are up to date, the revenues have been increased, the expenses have been increased. So when a project does come available, we're ready to spend the money. So for example, some of these different funds that are up here, we are increasing our budget for deferred taxes. If you recall, that's the prime use land where that money accumulates through the years, and we need to update our budgets so that money's our budget will equal the revenues and expenditures will match on that. So we're ready to spend that money when we have a project for deferred taxes. The automation enhancement money that's in our register of deeds, that needs to be updated. So that's part of the budget amendment. We also have tower rents where we're having the cell phone towers. We increase that year after year. Another thing that this budget amendment and project ordinances do is they move funds from completed projects to available funds. So some of our projects will go on for maybe a year and a half, 2 years, and then we'll have maybe $5,000 left over. We'll just put that into an available pot of money. So when something becomes available that we can new project, then we can come to you and say, hey, we'd like to do this project, and then we can spend that money. So our monies need to be cleaned up. So that's what another thing is doing. And also it writes off any revenues and expenditures for completed projects. So this just sort of just like a cleanup once a year, but we do have to do that through project ordinances and budget amendments. And that was fast, but any questions?
Questions for Susan?
And we have very detailed records if you want to see it. If you want to see them, I have very detailed records if you want to come by our office.
Okay, moving on to item 4.12, Workman's Compensation Fund Budget Amendment. Susan again.
Okay, and Finance, we review the revenues and expenditures annually for the Workers' Compensation Fund based on activity. I know we came to you a couple months ago and needed to appropriate fund balance. We've had an unusual year this year with higher claims than expected, and so therefore we have another budget amendment that's presented to you, and we're going to appropriate fund balance again. However, at this time, I also wanted to request that this be moved to new business instead of consent, because we have some things that are in the pipeline, and I think we'd have a better understanding and maybe an updated number by the June 18th meeting. So if possible, I'd like to move this to the new business and just see. And it may be that this one's just fine and we'll go on and pass it, but I would like the opportunity to be able to increase that budget if needed. And Kyle's here to answer any questions specific for claims.
Okay, questions for Kyle or Susan? Any theories as to why we are experiencing higher than normal incidences this year?
Without being too specific into any of the cases, we've had some incidences, falls, trips, both a lot in public safety, and we've also had some instances where surgery resulted in infection down the line, and that's caused some pretty significant claims.
Once again, it's all about Susan and your crystal ball, trying to predict into the future what's going to happen.
Yes, and we've used that crystal ball on what happened this year to budget for next year, and hopefully we won't need it, but it has been a rough year. And also keep in mind that some of the funds that have been budgeted for this year, we used to settle cases that had been out there for a while, and that would have happened in closed session with you all. So, that came from those funds.
All right. Any other questions? Comments?
Just real quick comment. Kyle and his staff, Lauren McCray, they work very hard with our department heads to try to address and minimize these falls and accidents and looking for opportunities for new programs, especially for our public safety folks to have some pre-shift exercises or shift or stretching and those type of things, because a lot of their accidents are from lifting or lunging or bending over and those type of things. So we work very hard to try to minimize these, but as many employees we have and the places that they go to do their jobs, it gets very tough sometimes. There are opportunities for a lot of accidents and injuries. So.
EMS has already initiated some of those procedures, and the CIP that came in front of you about the power stretchers,
Right.
the ones that go up and down, that's kind of a portion of it. But, keep in mind, working in the jail with inmates that you have confrontations with, we do have a lot of injuries over there, and transportation with wheelchairs, coming from personal property that might not be ADA compliant and trying to get them on the bus. So we do have a lot of risk.
Okay. Additional questions? Thank you. And we move to item 4.13, transfer surplus vehicle. And Michael Miller will present that.
Good evening. Allen Volunteer Fire Department has requested one surplus vehicle from the Cabarrus County Sheriff's Office fleet, and county staff have identified asset number 2183, which is a 2006 Ford Expedition with approximately 136,000 miles as a match for this request. According to the request from the fire department, the vehicle will be used as a medic unit to respond to medical calls, and also to transport personnel to training classes. The chief officers will also use this vehicle to run errands for the department, which will leave other department apparatus available within the district. So the requested action of the board is a motion to declare asset number 2183 from the Sheriff's Office fleet surplus property and authorize disposition in accordance with the county's vehicle replacement policy. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you guys have.
What's the standard typical mileage that we retire vehicles from the Sheriff's Department?
On emergency response vehicles, it's 100,000 miles as soon as we can replace it, and forecasting mileage and budget
Right.
stuff.
And
But
so this one's gone over that by a
yes,
bit.
sir.
Yeah.
From the time it took to actually order a new replacement and get it in place. For standard vehicles like our service trucks, it's just 125,000 miles.
Okay, questions? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, 4.14, David Thrift with a refund request on taxes.
Good evening. So before you, we have a refund request from the Fullerton Place Homeowners Association. Just to give you a quick summary, the December 29th, 2016, Lennar Carolinas LLC developer deeded 5 properties in the Fullerton Place Homeowners to the Fullerton Place Homeowners Association. So these were properties that had been platted and dedicated as common open space. These parcels, based on North Carolina 105-277.8, could have qualified for tax exemption from the homeowners association if they had properly and timely filed an application for that in 2017. So the application was not filed, and therefore the properties were considered taxable for 2017. The tax bills were created, and those tax bills have been paid. Fullerton Place Homeowners Association has requested a refund on those tax bills per 105-381, which is a general statute that provides relief of tax bills if they meet certain requirements. Reviewing this request, the tax administration staff found that at the time that the properties were dedicated to the common open space, that we erred in our assessment of those properties. We have a standard in our schedule of values in which we value property that's dedicated as common open area with the intent of going to the homeowners association at 10% of its market value. At the time that it's transferred to the homeowners association, that property typically becomes exempt during the application process. Since that was missed in this case, we felt that the 105-381 request could be addressed based on the fact that a clerical error in the assessment was transpired in our process from the tax administration staff in not valuing those properties at the 10% of market value. Three of those properties were valued at full value. So I provided some numbers for you. The breakdown of the three properties that were valued. The original tax bill amount for those 5 properties was $7,032.45. If we corrected those 3 properties to the 10% of value that they should have been done in the initial process, their corrected tax bill would be $725.23. So the request for refund would then be $6,307.22. We feel that the parcels for 2017 should still be taxable since the application wasn't filed, but they should have been taxed at the 10% of value instead of the market value. So.
What is the process for an HOA to know that they need to file an application? How do you know that?
Over the past couple of years, we've taken a number of steps to try to educate the homeowners associations. A lot of the builders associations are aware of that process. It's one of those statutes that's put in place, and the word is distributed through the associations, but there's not we've had to take a lot of steps to try to educate our taxpayers in that process.
So I would think if the builder or the developer doesn't pass it on and it goes to the HOA, they're not going to know.
And that's quite possibly the case in this scenario. The deeds were filed on December 29th. The homeowners association's conversation with us was that they were not aware of it.
I can understand that.
Their being unaware of it, however, doesn't avoid the necessity for them to file. So the tax bill is still a viable tax bill, but the valuation should have been done by our office.
Okay, other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, 4.15, general budget discussions, and we have Kristen Jones handing us more homework to do.
Do you mind passing this down? Good evening. Sorry, I think we're in the process of passing the papers out. It's just 2 final changes that I typically come before you after each budget workshop as we're making our final changes to the budget prior to its adoption on June 18th. You should have 3 sheets, 2 regular size pages, and then Susan and I will discuss updates to our CIP. And that's the larger sheet of paper. Yes. So you can see the first sheet that we're looking at, the first spreadsheet. There's kind of a pale pink line, orange line, that is showing you any new items that were last added after I last updated you guys on the general fund budget total. So we did add an additional $12,531 for an annual maintenance agreement for the EMS heart monitors. That is actually an FY18 capital improvement project. I believe it was funded at around $550,000, and this is the actual maintenance agreement for that equipment that will take place in FY19. Did I say that correctly?
That money that was funded is to replace the equipment that this maintenance agreement is for.
Okay.
They haven't, the company in which the EMS is utilizing the equipment was selling the equipment, then went out of the business of selling the equipment, and is now back in business selling the equipment, and will have it available in May or June of next year. But we've got equipment that the maintenance agreements have run out on about 12 of the particular pieces of equipment, and this is the maintenance agreement to keep that equipment alive until the new equipment comes on board next year. It's a little confusing that they came in and out of business.
And then the next change is just allotting additional money in the amount of $1,000 for a shared intern for the county. So that intern is to help departments such as the county manager's office, communications, human resources, and really any other county departments for FY19 that may have specific projects, special projects that intern can work on. And so you can see that by adding those two additional items in order to balance the budget, we pulled from salary adjustments in the amount of $13,531, which gives us a new general fund total of $255,617,652. Are there any questions? Haven't had too many final changes this year, which has been good. So I also attached another spreadsheet behind the general fund one, which is for the landfill fund. So that's one of our other annually adopted funds. And similar to what we did with the general fund when we update the salary projection based on personnel, cost, and benefits, it will pretty much make that fund out of balance. So in order to rebalance based on our last payroll change that I updated, in the total of $1,017, I am increasing the interest on investments for the landfill fund by the $1,017 in order to balance that fund again. So that brings that fund now to $1,172,571. And that's just to stay as accurate with live payroll as possible when we update the salary projection to reflect any payroll changes that have taken place after I initially pulled the projection in February. Are there any questions with the final changes? No? Alrighty, so we'll move on to the larger spreadsheet. And really we just wanted to kind of, Susan and I are up here, and we just kind of wanted to update you on the CIP request list. No actual projects changed, just some amounts did from the last time we presented it at the budget workshop. So at the budget workshop, we presented a capital reserve balance after we take in what's currently in the capital reserve fund and all of our school and county projects, and then the $3 million City of Concord contribution for the parking deck. It gave us a total to the good of $646,342, but then Susan can probably better explain. We had to move some funding around for two of our schools, which is now bringing the capital reserve balance total to the $484,592 if you follow that last column all the way down. So
some of the changes that we got real excited about, we were going to, instead of purchasing technology for our schools, for our new schools, we were going to start leasing it. So we were able to, before, when you first got your first lease, we were able to take out the product technology for the high school and the new elementary school, Hickory Ridge Elementary School. However, we didn't add back in the first year's lease payment because that's what it's going to take to get those equipment on hand. So we had to go back and add in the first year's equipment lease. So that was a total of $97,500 for our elementary school and $250,000 for our high school. So we were able to take out, for example, for our high school, we were able to take out $1 million worth of product, but we had to add in that first year's lease, which was $250,000. Same thing for the elementary school. We took out $390,000 of equipment if we would have purchased it, and we added it back in a lease payment of $97,500. So that was one of the changes. And then also the West Cabarrus contingency, we were able, back in May, if you remember at your meeting, you were went ahead and funded $860,000 of their contingency. So we took that out of the request for the contingency, and we also we had included $185,750 in that contingency that was actually given to them a couple months earlier out of the Mount Pleasant contingency, if you recall. So that needed to be adjusted because we didn't want to give them more contingency than we had previously originally planned to. So all that being taken into consideration, we went from the $600,000 number now to the $484,000. Like Kristen said, all the projects are still there. They're detailed out for you on the spreadsheet.
Okay, questions for Susan or Kristen? A lot of numbers.
So the column that's unfunded project list, those are items that we need to be aware of as this year proceeds and as conversations proceed to figure out where we're coming up with $37.6 million and when. Would that be a true statement?
Accurate statement, yes.
Thank you.
And
That's that green, up at the top, it's green,
Mhm.
highlighted unfunded project list.
And included, if you'll see, included the R. Brown McAllisters there that we spoke about earlier. That's been updated for the amount that would need to be requested. But we usually have money when we have our CAFR at the end of the year, usually December. We would present back to you the amount of money that we have that we can put for one-time projects. It's too early for us to be able to tell right now. Some of the projects we'll note at the bottom, towards the bottom of the page, there's not a dollar amount anywhere on there. If we were to show you the FY20 column, then they're listed there, because we're anticipating putting them in the FY20 budget. But the ones that are in the unfunded, we have no set plan for the funding.
there are other county projects that are out there that are not on here that we continue to push out and scheduled out in your 5-year plan as well.
Yeah, that's the glaring piece is that certainly before I got here from 14, when Commissioner Honeycutt and Commissioner Shue joined Chairman Morris and Commissioner Poole, the funding for Cabarrus County Schools and Kannapolis City Schools, there's been no bigger supporter than this board. But when you look at this sheet and the number that Commissioner Poole just referenced of $37 million, 35 of which is Cabarrus County Schools and Kannapolis City Schools. And I was going to use the word measly for $2 million. That's not a measly amount of money, but in comparison, it's a measly amount of money to set aside for everything else that we need to do. And it's like as Commissioner Honeycutt said when they were here, it's not their fault. They're here because people live here and go to school. We're required to provide the seat. But when you look at it in that light, I mean, it's just staggering to know that the burden is that heavy and that one-sided. And I've got no big answer. I'm waiting for the rabbit to come out of the hat that Commissioner Honeycutt. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think we sort of had somewhat of a dose of cold water earlier with the school system here, that both sides are going to have to dig in and figure out what the best thing is for everybody that lives in Cabarrus County. So, again, not to be Johnny-come-lately or state the obvious, but we've reached critical mass, and I think this board has done a very good work in supporting the school system, and I have no doubt that we will continue to do so. But there may be some tough choices that we have to make coming up. But thank you very much for all of the budget information that we've gotten. You all have done a tremendous job, and it's it is a lot of numbers, it's a lot to look at, and quite frankly, I rely on, you know, Commissioner Morris, Commissioner Poole have been looking at this stuff for a lot longer than certainly I have, and I trust their judgment and the question. I'm thankful that they ask a lot of questions and try to get some information out, because every time somebody asks a question, I'll learn something new. So, but thank you very much for all your hard work.
Is this your first budget here?
Second.
Second, okay. But there is a learning curve, especially when you know the other side of it, but then when you get to this big side, and I'll say this, because I had a conversation earlier today. The amount of information that y'all put together is huge, and you have to take time to figure it out. And I have not seen your video explaining it all, but I know it's out there. I saw it,
Yeah,
but I
be
didn't get
sure
to
to
click
watch
on
it.
it.
Yeah.
So I will make sure I watch it. And there is the Budget 101 on Friday,
Friday, June 15th,
June 15th.
from
So-
9:30 to 2. It's a little
Always
plug.
good to plug that. It's just, I mean, in my conversations, people are just amazed when you start talking about it. And then I feel bad because I keep thinking I'm stuck in the minutia, because this is my 10th budget here, 10 on the other side too. So that I sat through a lot with you guys then. So, but it's just amazing the amount of information that you do share, but people have to make an effort to watch the videos or to go online and pull those parts out. And y'all do a great job. So, I don't know if Kasha, I'm sorry for calling on you, if you want to say anything about the Budget 101. And I don't know what your response has been. I've put it out there on social media and trying to encourage people to sign up. I don't know if, I'm sorry if I've completely digressed from where the conversation was, but I just think the more you educate people, then the better off we all are.
I would say a great first step in learning more about the budget is to follow the county's Facebook page. From there, you can get at least basic information about when decisions are made and what's being discussed. The video we're talking about, Kristen took some time to explain the budget process and how it's months of work that come together. And it's presented, and it seems like it goes through in a month, but really it's 8 or 9 months of work to get it to that point. Government 101 is a session the Communications Department hosts in conjunction with the Budgeting Office. It offers a one-day seminar workshop that's very interactive. There are no presentations. It's more an experience where you learn about the budgeting process. You're able to ask questions, and we have Commissioner Morris and Commissioner Hsu scheduled to be there. So in the end, after you've learned about the process, you can ask questions, and County Manager Downs will be there as well, to get specific answers and learn. We've had a lot of discussion about the increase in tax rate, and this is a great opportunity if you have any questions about that process to come and learn and see how the budget reflects what's happening in our community. Again, June 15th, 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. We've had great response, but we'll try to make room for anyone who wants to be there, especially in consideration of the tax change. Thank you.
But you'd like some advance notice that they're coming?
Yes.
Yes,
To make
we would like
arrangements.
people to RSVP that
Yes.
they're going to show up.
Yes, please RSVP. You can email me at outreach@cabarruscounty.us, or you can call 704-920-2336, and we'll be happy to take care of you, or go to the county's website under events. Thank you.
You got an announcement to make? Did we just get an award?
Yes, thank you. Our financial report just received for the 33rd year in a row, the GFOA Certificate for Reporting Excellence. So we just received notice at the end of last week. Thank you.
Right.
So big shout out to our
Congratulations. Good
staff, because it takes everyone in our department, and our Assistant Finance Director, Suzanne Burgess, actually headed it up this year. So big thank you to all of our staff.
Okay, other budget questions? Okay, hearing none, we will move to the next item, which is approval of the regular meeting agenda. We have heard one request to move item F8, which is the Workman's Compensation Fund Budget Amendment, to new business. So if we can move that to G4. Yes, ma'am.
Could we move item number F11, R. Brown McAllister item to G5, I guess? Just to make sure we have another opportunity to discuss that one.
Okay,
and
so that would be F11 will become
G5.
G5. Okay, any other changes that you see need to be made?
I'll move for approval with those changes.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the proposed agenda with those two changes. Do I hear a second? Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. And we do have need of a closed session tonight. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to go into closed session to discuss pending litigation and economic development per North Carolina General Statute 143-318, 11A, 3, and 4. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. We are now in closed session.